New York City, 1971. This wasn't the city of sparkling lights on Broadway or the high society galas of Park Avenue. This was a labyrinth of open trash fires, subway cars choked with graffiti, and the pervasive, suffocating scent of desperation. In the heart of this urban furnace, a man emerged with a face carved by time and hardship. That man was Popeye Doyle in The French Connection, and behind those eyes, burning with a restless, violent hunger, was Gene Hackman. Overnight, Gene was transformed from a steady, second-tier character actor into the new king of Hollywood. The world worshipped him as an icon of brutal integrity, the relentless hunter who never blinked and never backed down. But Hollywood is a machine built to manufacture the most perfect illusions. When the camera lenses stopped spinning, when the shout of cut faded into the night air, a different Gene Hackman stepped out from the shadows. He wasn't the hero saving the city from a heroin tide. He was a sinner chasing his own ghost through the dark alleys of desire. Many said Gene didn't need to act when playing obsessive men, for his own life was the series of unyielding obsessions. Behind the polished badge of Popeye Doyle or the chrome-plated ego of Lex Luthor lay a secret life, a dossier of scandals buried under stacks of cash and ironclad non-disclosure agreements. Today, we aren't talking about the Academy Awards. We are prying open the blackest file on Gene Hackman, the man who used his rugged persona to mask a soul riddled with the scars of guilt. This is a real-life noir script, where the sun never rises, and the truth is more terrifying than fiction. In the early 1970s, Gene Hackman was the gold standard of the box office. He lacked the golden boy sheen of Robert Redford, or the blue-eyed magnetism of Paul Newman. Gene had the stare of a butcher and the raw power of a bull. That was exactly why millions of Americans adored him. They craved that unvarnished, working-class grit. But Gene himself loathed the glitter of Hollywood Hills. He despised the cocktail parties where the only currency was box office receipts and award speculation. Gene's real addiction was anonymity. He would often climb into his beat-up sedan and drive for hours, leaving the five-star luxury of Manhattan for the decaying tenements of Queens or the industrial heart of Brooklyn. In those places, he wasn't a superstar. He was just a middle-aged man with a face that blended into the smog. And that was where he found Clara. Clara wasn't a starlet waiting for a break. She was a stripper at a dive bar called the Velvet Trap, a place so grim even the local precinct avoided it unless they had a riot warrant. Clara possessed the beauty of a faded rose, with platinum hair brittle from cheap chemicals, and eyes that held the sorrow of a woman who had lost the race before it even started. Between Gene and Clara, a strange, toxic bond formed, cemented by bottom-shelf gin and the thick, gray haze of Camel cigarettes. Gene would sit for hours in the darkest corner of the club, watching Clara dance under flickering red neon lights that hummed like a dying insect. He didn't want to possess her in the traditional sense. He wanted to be a witness to her collapse. To Gene, Clara was the mirror reflecting the dark side he was forced to hide from the public. But this clandestine escape soon turned into a nightmare. The line between the integrity of Popeye Doyle and the squalor of Gene's nights began to dissolve. He started skipping rehearsals. He arrived on set with eyes clouded by sleep deprivation and the stale scent of cheap bars. The hero was being stained by the very shadows he was supposed to be fighting. By 1978, Gene Hackman was cast as Lex Luthor in the massive blockbuster Superman. This was the moment where his professional peak and his personal abyss collided with a violent force. With a prosthetic bald head and three-piece suits worth thousands of dollars, Gene embodied the arch-nemesis of the world's greatest hero. But behind the scenes of the most expensive movie ever made, Gene was living in a state of vibrating paranoia. Clara was no longer a quiet secret. She had realized the man in the corner of the strip club was the same man being cheered by the world. Poverty had turned her admiration into a razor-sharp greed. Clara began to blackmail Gene. She would show up at filming locations, standing on the edge of the crowds with a haunting, knowing smile. She sent him scraps of paper detailing their nights in those damp Queens apartments, threatening to sell the Doyle diaries to the tabloids unless she received massive stipends. Gene's fatal mistake was attempting to control her by bringing her into his world. He arranged a job for her as a craft service assistant on the set of Superman. He thought if she was close, he could watch her. He was wrong. Under the harsh lights of the movie set, Clara watched as Gene laughed with beautiful co-stars, women who belonged to a social caste she would never touch. Her jealousy, fueled by years of being discarded, turned into a silent fury. She began to keep a daily journal, not a diary of love, but a dossier of Gene's sins. She recorded his insults toward directors, his substance-fueled rants, and the moments of profound weakness that the world's tough guy could never afford to show. That journal became a ticking time bomb, sitting in a prop trailer, ready to incinerate Gene Hackman's legacy. The explosion happened in the fall of 1978. At the legendary Plaza Hotel in Manhattan, an international press junket for Superman was in full swing. The world's top journalists were gathered, and Gene Hackman, in a tailored suit, was answering questions about the morality and ethics of his characters. Suddenly, Clara burst into the lobby. She wasn't the seductive dancer anymore. She was a woman on the edge, her hair matted, clutching the journal like a holy relic. She screamed Gene's name, demanding he face the debt of blood he owed her. The lobby went silent. In that crowd, a freelance paparazzo, known as the Vulture of New York, smelled a kill. Gene, driven by the predator instinct that made him famous, lunged from the press table. He dragged Clara into a shadowed alcove near the elevators. In that split second, the Vulture's flashbulb exploded. The image captured was horrific. Gene Hackman gripping Clara's wrists, his face distorted by a primal rage, while she wept in terror. It wasn't acting. It was the raw, unedited truth of this man behind the badge. That night, the studio's legal cleaners executed the largest cover-up in Hollywood history. Black envelopes filled with cash were exchanged in the Plaza's underground garage to buy back every frame of that film. Clara's journal was seized and burned in the fireplace of the presidential suite. By morning, Clara was escorted onto a westward train with a one-way ticket and a warning: disappear or be disappeared. Gene Hackman appeared on set the next day as if nothing had happened, but those close to him said his eyes had turned into chips of cold blue ice. He had saved his career, but he had lost his humanity. Gene Hackman survived the 1978 scandal, but the man who emerged was different. The incident with Clara left a scar that never closed. He became notoriously difficult on set, a man whose professionalism was now a weapon used to keep people at a distance. The legendary grit in his later performances wasn't a technique. It was a catharsis. He was purging the guilt of those nights in Queens every time the camera rolled. Audiences praised his depth, but they were actually watching a man punish himself on screen. His relationships crumbled. He couldn't trust anyone, fearing every new face was another Clara waiting to pull a journal from their bag. He became the invisible legend, a man who owned the screen but refused to own his life. In the early 2000s, at the height of his powers, Gene Hackman did something that shocked the industry. He walked away. No farewell tours, no lifetime achievement galas, no sentimental speeches. He packed his bags and moved to the desert of New Mexico, living a life of profound seclusion. He spent his time writing historical novels, stories about the past, about men who had to pay for their sins. It was his only way to face the ghosts of New York. He carried the secrets of the Velvet Trap and the cries of the Plaza Hotel into a silence that will likely never be broken. When we rewatch The French Connection or Superman, we still see the immortal Gene Hackman, the untouchable titan of the silver screen, but behind that mask was a man of profound contradictions. Gene Hackman taught Hollywood a bitter lesson. You can control a city on film, but you can never truly control the demons inside your own skin. He is the final symbol of an era where stars could live like fallen gods in the shadows and still be worshipped as saints in the light. But in the flicker of those old films, Clara's ghost remains. She is there in every squint, every outburst of rage, and every cold stare. She reminds us that even men of steel have fractures that no amount of money or fame can ever truly heal. The black files on Gene Hackman might be sealed by lawyers and time, but the truth is written in the lines of his face. He survived the hunt. He kept his crown, but he spent the rest of his life in a prison of his own making. A prison called silence. Gene Hackman chose to vanish to protect the glory of his roles. What do you think of that choice? Should we judge a great artist by the darkness of their private life? Or is the illusion all that matters? Leave a comment below and don't forget to subscribe to unlock more Black Files. We'll see you back in the shadows of Hollywood, where the truth is always more terrifying than the movies. Who should be our next target? Al Pacino and his power-drunk benders, or Dustin Hoffman and his obsessive, toxic perfectionism? You decide. The night is long, and the secrets are just getting started.